What we have here is an RCA VBT-200. This is the very first VHS machine that was ever available in the West. And this one does not work, and we are going to try to get it working today. So let's take a look at what it is and isn't doing. Power's on okay. Our end of tape indicator light is working okay. Our tuner lights are working okay. Clock is working. The timer also works. I checked that off camera. So everything electronically seems okay, but here's what happens when we put a tape in. So let's try to play. It will thread, kind of, but you see it's starting to make some crinkly noises. Tape's not advancing. It unthreads, so we have some life there. I can fast forward, but the brake on this reel doesn't work. So when I do that, the tape will go flying. Rewind works, but this brake still isn't working, and you'll notice when I hit stop, it's still leaving a little bit of tape slack there where it shouldn't. So my best guess is we've got some bad belts, maybe a bad roller. Could be something else that's out of adjustment, but we won't know until we get the cover off, and that's going to be our next step here. And yeah, just a handful of screws we got to remove to get the cover off, and we'll see how it goes and what we find inside. Okay, we gave it power. Let's turn it on. You can see the tape head spinning up. It's not making a lot of crazy sounds. That is a good sign. And we'll hit eject here. Let's see what happens when we put the tape in and try to play it. So on these older machines, it is normal for the tape head to spin up as soon as it's powered on. Later machines wouldn't do that until you went to actually hit play. So if you don't know how a VCR works, when you put a tape in, you might be able to see, well, it lifts up the protective cover at the end of the tape, and then it will, when you go to play the tape, it'll actually extract the tape and wrap it around this head that's spinning around and through the various bits of transport. So let's see what happens. Okay, push play. You can see it's sort of working. It's working really slow. It's having a hard time getting the tape wrapped around, and then nothing's happening at all. Let's see. Down here we have a pinch roller that should be moving the tape along. If I squeeze that, what happens? Nothing. Okay. So I think we have some bad belts and rollers, and I might have to flip this over and take the bottom off to take a look at that. Now it does unthread, so that's a good sign, but it was still struggling a little bit to do that as well. So I think the time has come to flip this over and see what we can see underneath, because I think there'll be we're going to find some bad belts and bad rollers like I'd mentioned. Let's find out. So I removed, I pulled power for one. I removed a handful of screws that are against this rail. And I gotta say, you can tell that they meant for these things to be serviced because they have enough wire and you can pull these circuit boards out of the way, but I didn't have to disconnect anything. So immediate first look, all the belts are there. This one's maybe a little bit loose. That one actually feels okay. Well, I think what we should do is probably put power into this thing and put a tape into it and see what happens on this side of the machine when we try to hit play. Right, we put a tape in, I've powered the machine, and let me push play. I gotta kind of look under here and see the button. I'll show you what's going on. I don't immediately see anything that I think would cause the symptoms we're seeing. So here's play. This stepper motor here with this worm gear, that's what threads the tape. That grease, I could probably put some fresh grease on there, and I probably will. The belt's moving around a little bit, this one here, but everything's moving and turning as it should do, so I'm not convinced that the problem lies here. I do have belts. I will put fresh belts in here just the same, but I think our problem's somewhere else. So same when I hit, let's see if I can do this upside down, fast forward and rewind. So Yeah, I think we need to flip this back over and look at the other side. So let's go ahead and do that. Something before I flipped it over, and I want to show it to you here. So as far as the brake not working, this is the braking mechanism for either reel. It might be kind of hard to see. There you can kind of see the pad. And what's happening is if I push fast forward, where do we go? There we go. Right there, that's the braking mechanism. You see how it flips back. That's what stops this thing from rotating. Watch what happens on this side. We're looking at this little cam right here. It does not move back into position. See if I can help it when I hit stop. That should cause us to stop. Okay, so we figured out why the brake's not working, and that could be part of the issue that we're having here. I think a lot of the moving pieces on this machine are probably just seized up, so some general cleanup, some lubrication might make all the difference. Well, we've got one problem solved. I was able to use some of this 3-in-1 oil over here, and I lubricated the brakes and worked the mechanism back and forth a little bit, and they're now moving as they expect. I popped this tape in. Bear in mind it doesn't have the transport in place, so I'll have to hold it as I do this, but you'll see. There we go. I can fast forward. It stops as it should. I can rewind. And it stops just as it should. So we're making some progress. All the grease that was on this worm gear here, and I put some fresh white lithium grease on there, but I'm beginning to think that the problem might lie elsewhere. So if we push play here, check out what happens. This motor right here is not disengaging. Once the tape extractor fingers are in position, that motor should stop. And I'm thinking there may be a sensor or maybe a leaf switch that is supposed to engage when the tape is where it's supposed to be. That's not engaging, which is in turn causing this motor to continue to run and not engaging the solenoid, which would cause the tape to play. So I'm going to flip this back over and do some poking around to see, because again, if we look closely at the spindle here, you'll see it's not moving now. If I push play, it keeps moving. It's hard to see on the camera, I know, but that shouldn't be moving. The motor is still engaged, so I'll flip this back over and take a look at what I can find. We're making some progress. So this little cover was here. I've taken it off. It was held in with a single screw, but look at this. I found a leaf spring, and check out what happens when I power this on and I push play. So right now, that leaf spring is not engaging. The mechanism stalls. It doesn't think that the tape was able to thread. Now watch what happens when I engage the leaf switch. The solenoid engages. We have a rotating spindle here, and we have a pinch roller that's in contact with the capstan. When I let go, it goes back into that mode. So I think we found the source of our problem. For whatever reason, this part of the leaf switch needs to be engaging, and it's based on this little plastic tab down here. Now, as for why it's not engaging, I haven't found the cause yet. Maybe there's a broken bit of plastic. I don't know. But we'll do some further investigation and see what we can do to make that little tab engage that leaf switch. What we need to do, we need to lubricate. If you look in here, you can see this bit of business right in here, this kind of ring here. So by looking at the service manual, I was able to determine that this ring is kind of sandwiched in. It's a multi-layer piece. And if I push play, that top ring should move a little bit further than this loading peg here does. So let me grab a pick tool here. And watch what happens if I help it along a little bit. Oh, almost. There we go. Look, machine's working. So I grabbed in here on this little peg here and pulled and pushed on this opening over here. And now if we look at that leaf switch, it's engaged. Imagine that. So the next step here is we need to figure out what can we do to free up these rings so that they'll move without any help. And I think the best thing to do is probably just add a bit of oil and then work the mechanism back and forth a number of times and see how it goes. So let's give that a shot. So I've lubricated those rails a little bit. I've put some oil in there and also some silicone spray, which can help loosen things up. And we're getting more movement than before. You can see it's almost getting there, but what's happening is look at the leaf switch here. We're getting really close to engagement, but as soon as that tab touches where the leaf spring is, you can almost see it. Just barely. It's touching that, but the resistance of there, you could kind of see it move there. The resistance of that tab is pushing back enough on the mechanism to prevent it from engaging. And it will engage though. See, if I give it a little bit of help, let me do it again where I hold the camera a little bit more easily. There you go. You see it'll engage and it'll stay engaged. So I wonder if maybe that belt on the underside that drives the worm gear, that threads the tape, I'm wondering if maybe that belt is slipping a little bit. I did not change it before. So I think the next step here is to flip this thing over, take the bottom off, and see what's going on, and see if we can manually help it along to that final position. And if we can, maybe a fresh belt will take care of this. All right, we're getting ever so much closer to a solution here. So we got the bottom cover off. I've got the circuit board swung out of the way so we can see the belts again. And this is that worm gear that drives the loading mechanism. So I want to show you if I find the right, I think this is it. I think this is play. It stalls right here. This motor's still turning, but if I help it along, it pushes it to where it needs to go, and now it is engaging. And I noticed if I squeeze that belt a little bit while I'm doing that, it will grab on. So I think that belt is a bit fatigued. So what we'll do is we'll get that belt off, and I'll see if I have an appropriate size in my my tickle trunk of replacements, if you will. So just looking at the belt a little bit, it does look like it's sitting a little bit, there's maybe just it's maybe just a little bit loose. And I think that might be the difference here. So see if I put a little bit of tension on there, it will grab on. So let's see what happens if we get a new belt on there. I'm going to take the old belt off first, and we can have a look at it and see it may be out of round, which would be another indicator that the belt is fatigued. So let's get that belt off and take a look. I think I've got a brand new belt. You can see that's an RCA 3.0 that I ordered up online. And even just looking in the packaging here, you can see this new one. It's the same thickness, but look at how much smaller it is. So I'll bet you we're going to put that on, and I suspect this may be all we need to do to get this VCR up and running. So let's get this belt on here. This belt also just feels a lot more flexible. It just feels better. So we're going to try to get this on. Maybe a little bit of a challenge, but let's try to hook it on like so first. I will say that, while not impossible, they don't give you a lot of wiggle room when you're trying to secure the belts on this machine. All right, we have that around that pulley. Let me grab that pick tool. So one thing that's nice about these square belts is once you get them around their pulley, you don't have to necessarily make sure they're totally flat, because they will straighten themselves out as soon as you turn them on. So let's power the machine on now that we got the new belt on. Okay. What happens if we push play now? Hey, hey, hey! Look at that! I think we have a working VCR. Let's try that again. Gotta find the right button. It's hard to do it upside down. I believe we are in business. Okay. I'm going to go ahead and button this bad boy back up. And, yeah, moment of truth will be here soon. We'll pop a tape in and see if it'll play on its own. Alright, here's the moment of truth. Let's push play and see if the machine will engage without my help. I think we have a winner. So before I totally button the machine back up, what I'm going to do, I'm going to reinstall the tape transport mechanism, the holder, or the loading mechanism. I'm going to get that installed. We'll put a tape in, we'll hook it up to the TV, and see what happens when I push play. Okay, here's the moment of truth. I got the TV on. We use our test tape. And I have nothing against sacrificing a copy of the South Park motion picture, but I have a couple of different copies of this on VHS, so I figured if this machine was going to chew up a tape, it could be one that I could easily spare. Alright, let's see what happens. Moment of truth. Fingers crossed. I think it's going to work, though.
No!
Look at that!
What do you mean, no? Harrison Phillips Actions of Fire has been rated R by the Motion Picture Association of America. You have to be accompanied by...
We have a working VCR with good picture and sound.
Next, please. This can't be happening. We have to see this movie, dude.
There's a rolling bar there on your image, but that's just the refresh rate of my camera. The picture looks really good in person.
Wait, I've got an idea.
We have success!
I want 6 tickets.
So I've got the machine buttoned all back up, and before we let you go, I wanted to demonstrate it with a period correct videotape. This is from the second ever batch of home video releases from the Magnetic Video Corporation. This one carries a copyright date of 1978, so this tape would have been available in early 1978 from the second batch of home video releases that was ever made available. So appropriate for the age of this VCR, because this is probably, in fact, at the time when this tape was made available, this is probably the only VHS machine anybody would have been able to play it on. And Magnetic Video Corporation was dubbing these all in real time. They were just using off-the-shelf tapes. But yeah, here you go. So let's pop it in and give a look at how it looks.
By special arrangement with the estate of Charles Chaplin, Magnetic Video Corporation is proud to offer the following classic motion picture on video cassette.
And sure enough, it's a transfer from an old beat-up print. Doesn't look very good, but at the time, this would have been quite the novelty. It's nice to see this machine finally working the way it's supposed to after all these years.